It's Algebra 1, Lesson 5.5, talking about point slope form here. We've talked about slopes of equations. We talked about writing equations using slope and using a y-intercept. We've talked about taking 1 point and a slope and finding a y-intercept and then writing an equation in slope-intercept form. And we've talked about taking 2 points and finding a slope, then finding a y-intercept and writing the equation. Today we're looking at point slope. Now, slope-intercept form talked about two things in an equation, or it gave two things. It gave a slope and it gave an intercept. More specifically, we know it gave a y-intercept or a b value. When you're talking about point slope form, you're not going to deal with the intercept at all. You're still going to have the same slope. It'll still be the same m value in the equation, but it'll be in a different form, and all this begins on page 300. The point slope form of an equation of a non-vertical line, it just means something that doesn't have a slope of an undefined amount, a vertical line, passes through point x sub 1, y sub 1 with a slope of m. You write it as y minus y sub 1, and this is key right here, this minus, and this other one, x minus. Both of those are key. What that tells you is that each one of those values that you subtract are going to be the opposites. So this, whatever this says, is going to be the opposite. Whatever this one says is going to be the opposite. Because if you put x minus a negative, I'm sorry, I wrote it in the wrong order. If you put y minus a negative and x minus a negative versus y minus a positive and x minus a positive, what I mean by that, let's say the point you wanted to put was 1, 3. So you would put 1 in place of x and 3 in place of y. So when you graph that, it shows the opposite of each of these values. It shows the opposite of -1, and it shows the opposite of -3. On the flip side, if you put in -1, -3, now what we have is minus a negative, and we know minus a negative is going to create plus a positive for each of these. So it'll create y plus 3, and it'll create x plus 1. Again, you'll graph the opposites of each of those. You'll graph -1 and you'll graph -3. Example number 1 is using the point slope form. It says write an equation, or write the point slope form of the equation that passes through 1, 1 and 5, 3. You're going to find the slope the same way. Your slope, or your m, is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1, the slope formula, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So just label them. This is x and y. This is x and y. Just label them as sub 1, which it is already, and sub 2. And plug the values in. Y sub 1, we know is, y sub 2, according to the slope formula, is 3. Minus y sub 1 is 1. Over x sub 2 is 5, minus x sub 1 is 1. So 3 minus 1 is 2. This is going to give you 2, and 5 minus 1 is going to give you 4. We know that this simplifies. 2 over 4 will simplify to 1 over 2. So that none of that's new. All that stuff we've been doing. Find the slope. Now this next part is the new part. It says then use the slope and 1 point. So you had 2 points. You had one of them said 1, 1. The other one said 5, 3. So you're going to pick one of those, and both of them are equally easy. And then you're going to write the equation in point slope form. Y, this is how you write point slope form. You put y minus something equals something times x minus something. And remember, we know what all of those somethings are. I'm just leaving them blank for a second to let you know that this is going to be the same every time. That's going to be the same every time. And those minuses actually might change. The m value is going to be placed right here. We found the m value a second ago was 1/2. Your slope goes right outside that parentheses. And then your x and your y values are the opposites of whichever point we use. It says to use the first one, just according to this. It uses this point. So you're going to put the opposite of 1. So right here it says -1. And the opposite of 1 again. So again it says -1. And we'll have another example that shows that in a second, just to where that opposite part doesn't confuse you. So the equation says y minus 1 equals 1/2 times x minus 1. That's written in point slope form. Okay, take 1 minute and do this one. Got plenty of room on the back. Okay, we went a little bit longer than a minute right there. First thing you want to do is you want to find the slope. Remember, you can use the slope formula. You can say y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. We'll do that. Y sub 2, negative 1 minus y sub 1. 1 minus 3 will be negative 2 over x sub 2, negative 1 minus a negative 2 means plus 2. Negative 1 plus 2 is going to be 1. So your slope, when you find it using those 2 points, is negative 2. So we're going to use that as our slope, negative 2. So in your equation, it says y minus y sub 1 equals m. We just found out what m's value is, negative 2. So that's what goes in that spot right there, times x minus x sub 1. Now what you need to do is you need to take one of the points. It doesn't matter which one. Let's say we take this first point that's given to us, negative 2, 3. This is your x value, negative 2. Whatever it says right there, you plug in the opposite in a parentheses with x. So it says negative 2, so you plug in positive 2. The other one, y, its value says positive 3. So with the y value over here, you plug in the opposite, negative 3 or minus 3. So that would be what your equation would say. If you use the other point, you'll have the same exact thing, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. The m's not going to change. It's still going to be negative 2. But you're going to have a different point, negative 1, 1. This is your x value. It says negative 1. So the opposite of what you plug in here is plus 1. And this one is your y value. It says positive 1. So next to the y, you plug in the opposite of that one, which is minus 1. So this would be two answers for the same equation. Y minus 1 equals negative 2 times x plus 1, and y minus 3 equals negative 2 times x plus 2. And regardless of which one you graphed, it would look exactly the same. You would just be starting at one point for the first equation, and you'd be starting at another point for the second equation. Notice the slope is the same, so the line will look exactly the same. Example number 2 is using the point slope form. It says write the point slope form of the equation of the line that passes through negative 6, 8 and has a slope of negative 1. Then rewrite it in slope intercept form. Okay, so you don't have to do any figuring to find the point slope form, because you are given a point and you are given a slope. So we have a point and we have an m value. So in place of m, we're going to plug in -1 right there. In place of our x and our y values, our x, we're going to plug in the opposite of -6 there, so it should say +6. And we're going to plug in the opposite of +8 right there. It should say -8. So y -8 equals -1 times x minus a -6. Minus a negative in a second will become +6. That's what I was talking about, the opposite, +6. So from there, create slope-intercept form. You do just like on the bell work. -1 times x is -x. -1 times 6 is -6. Notice it says y -8 equals -8 minus 6. And then the last thing you got to do to get the y by itself is to move the negative or -8 over. Cancel out -8 by adding 8 to both sides. It'll cancel on the left. If you add 8 to the right-hand side, -6 plus 8 is going to be +2. So y equals -x plus 2. So the equation in slope-intercept form is -x plus 2. Okay? Take 1 minute to write this equation. It should probably only take you about 30 seconds or so. Okay? Writing this one in point slope form. Very simple. This is your slope, your m value. Your m goes outside of the parentheses, so it goes right there. So in that spot, you're going to plug in -1/3, just like we did in slope-intercept form. Then you're going to plug in the opposites of your x and your y value. This is your x value. It says -1. So in the parentheses right here with the x, you're going to plug in the opposite of what it says. It says -1. You're going to plug in +1. The other one is your y value, -6. Again, you're going to plug in the opposite of what that says. Right here next to the y, you're going to plug in +6. So that's point slope form. Y plus 6 equals -1/3 times x plus 1. Then we had 4 checkpoint problems. It says write it in point slope form, an equation that passes through the given points. Well, the first thing you need in order to find point slope form is you need to find out what the slope is. You got to find the m. Remember, you can always use the slope formula. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1, the change of y, over x sub 2 minus x sub 1, the change of x. You can always go back to that. You can always label it. You won't make a mistake. A little bit of a faster way to do it, though, is to take y sub 2 and subtract y sub 1 from it. -3 minus a negative y, -4 means -3 plus 4, which is going to be +1, over 5 minus 3 is going to be 2. So your slope is going to be 1/2. When you write the equation, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. We'll plug those parts in right there. So you could choose either one of the points. If they look the same, use the first point where you don't make a mistake. Just always default to the first point. So that first point is 3, -4. Or we should say 3, -4. And just plug the values in. This is your x value. It says +3. So the opposite, which you plug in right here, is negative 3. Your slope goes right here in place of your m. The other one, your y value, is this one. It says negative 4. So next to the y, you plug in positive 4. There is your point slope form. The other version of the equation is if you had used this point instead. Then it would say instead y plus 3 equals the same 1/2 times x minus 5. Those are two versions of the same equation. Find the slope of number 2. Negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9. 8 minus a negative 4 means 8 plus 4, which is going to be 12. We can simplify this. The number 3 goes into both of them. It goes into negative 9, negative 3 times, and it goes into 12 4 times. So your slope is negative 3/4. Again, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. First thing you can do is plug the slope in. If you feel better just sticking that one in first. Negative 3/4 goes right there. Then take one of the points. One of your points is negative 4, 6. This is your x value. It says minus 4 or negative 4. So next to the x, you plug in the opposite of that. It's always the opposite, plus 4. The other one, your y value, says positive 6. Next to the y, you plug in the opposite of positive 6, which is negative 6. And there is your equation in point slope form. Again, the alternative equation is if you use the point 8, negative 3. If you use the point 8, negative 3, it would say y plus 3, the opposite of that one, equals the same negative 3/4, the same slope, times x minus 8, because it's the opposite of positive 8. That would be the alternative one. Same equation, just passing through two different points. Number 3 and number 4 say write the point slope form of the equation that passes through the point with the given slope, then change it, rewrite it in slope intercept form. So these are really simple. We don't even have to do any figuring for slope for these. All we have to do is sub them in or plug them into the right spot. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. So your m value for this one is 2. Your x value for this one is, it says negative 3, so you plug in the opposite of negative 3, you plug in positive 3. Your y value says negative 5, you plug in the opposite of negative 5 and put positive 5. There is your point slope form of the equation. The second part says to rewrite it in slope intercept form. In order to do that, you have to distribute, like we did on the bell work, 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 3 is plus 6. Y plus 5 equals 2x minus 6. You got one more thing to do. You have to cancel out this plus 5 by subtracting it on both sides. Y equals 2x plus 1 would be slope intercept form. And if you graphed both of those equations, it would be the same picture. Do the same thing for number 4. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. M's value again is negative 2. It goes right there. X's value is negative 1, it says. So you put the opposite one. You put in plus 1. Y's value is positive 9. You put in the opposite of positive 9. You put minus 9. Here is your point slope form. Notice it's as easy as plugging in numbers. Then in order to make slope intercept form, distribute negative 2 again. You get negative 2x. Negative 2 times 1 is minus 2. Y minus 9 equals negative 2x plus 2. One more step to do. Cancel out minus 9 by adding it on both sides. Y equals negative 2x plus 7. Slope intercept form.